Hello, BookTube. I've got a shelf tour for you today. Wah! W, as the kids say, TF. I gave up my library tour for 2022 weeks ago when it became utterly unavoidable to me that my library is in a serious state of flux and that a library tour would be kind of ridiculous because it's not the document that I thought it would be. My library is going to be very different by the end of the year than any video tour that I could give you, during the course of the year will show. But nevertheless, here I am on my hind legs giving you a shelf tour, and not only a shelf tour, but a shelf tour in the darkest depths of Mordor. This little built-in hutch that has shelves in it in one of the walls of Hyde Cottage. So it's the only built-in shelves anywhere here, and it's in kind of the middle room. It's not in the kitchen. I imagine at one point in the past, probably this was a dining room, and these shelves would be for the fancy china that would be up on display. I could be wrong about that, but of course, the instant I saw them, I immediately colonized them for books. So I thought we'd go over some of those books and see what we have here. So what is the first one? All the way over at the end here. Oh, okay. All right. This is by Philip Ording. This is 99 Variations on a Proof. That's all that it is. It's just a book of variations on a proof. So let me see. It has all sorts of graphics in it to just take you through how the author does that. And I thought, when I first got it, do I have a pub sheet in here? I bet I do. We probably got this when we knew each other. Yeah, 2019. When I first got this, I thought, well, no matter who this is for, it's certainly not for me. But I was determined to read it and get as much out of it as I could. I found it kind of mesmerizing. Actually, tell you the truth, I found it kind of mesmerizing. So it's definitely due for a reread as soon as I'm up for that. I don't know when that will be. Oh, okay. These next three are part of a series called Earth Before Us. And they are great. Absolutely great. I imagine that they're technically made for children, but I fell in love with them. I think any adult would. They are... let's see here. I think I'm missing a volume, or maybe it's here and it's just not with the other three. They are all by Abby Howard, and they are great. Abby Howard does the text and also the art. They are Dinosaur Empire. That thing on the cover is a dinosaur. According to Abby Howard, they were fully feathered. Mammal Takeover, and Ocean Renegades, where even the ocean creatures have feathered gills. And they are fully illustrated tours through the history of their particular slice of life on Earth. This one taking you all through all the life in Earth's oceans and eventually having it crawl out on land. The Mammal Takeover is all about not only the famous prehistoric mammals, but also the not so famous ones, the ones you might not know. And the text is, the narration is funny and lighthearted and just wonderful. So informative while also being fun to read. Okay, this is also an uncorrected proof. So this must have been on this channel, also from 2019. This is by James Trefil and Michael Sumners, and it is Imagined Life. It's a speculative journey through what life would be like in other planetary biospheres, maybe based on some of what we know about exoplanets. What would that life be like? What are some of the parameters for it? I found it utterly fascinating. The authors, of course, start off by asking what life is just in general. Until you've grappled with that, you really can't answer any of the deeper questions. And this has a whole bunch of written material in it. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad I have this. It's with these other life sciences things, but I imagine that's not going to stay true for long. Okay, the other day, in context of the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, I mentioned Skip Finley, who's a legend, and this is a book by him, Whaling Captains of Color, in which he goes through the records. Of course, if you're on the vineyard, you have access to a huge amount of whaling era records to find out what opportunities were available to black men at sea hunting whales that weren't available to their land counterparts. Were they freer? Did they have more autonomy at sea and once they got back? Did they have more money? fascinating. I'd never read a book like it before. It was an absolute pleasure to review it. Let's see here. Wedge this back in. Oh, okay. Here we have Rory Muir's book. This shouldn't be here. This should be in history. This is Gentleman of Uncertain Fortune. His book about ne'er-do-wells, second, third, and fourth sons in the Regency era, and what they actually did. what did they do under the Georges and in the Regency era? What did they do? How did they make their living? That sort of thing. I found it so fascinating that I've tipped a bunch of reviews inside it and could not give it up. I imagine that I will reread this. I couldn't really say goodbye to it. I'm gonna take it off the shelf here and put it where it belongs, so that I can lay hands on it. Right? I want to be able to lay hands on it. Okay, the same thing. This next one is the same thing. This is from comparatively recently. This is by Paul Deslandis, and it's The Culture of Male Beauty in Britain. And you have a celebrated male beauty on the cover. And this is all about, you know, how it was perceived, how it's been perceived for the last 150 years, what have been its sexual components, and also not, how it's promulgated into the public, into, you know, popular media. A fascinating book, but also history. So this is good that we're doing this. Oh, okay, all right. Well, I probably know why I have this, but it's still pretty distasteful. This is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Probably, I read this and I probably kept it because of how much it infuriated me. I think it's the cornerstone of a lot of 21st century, just mainstream accepted racism. Because it's not just in this book, famously, by now you've heard of this book, I'm sure. Famously in this book, it's not enough for you to hate racism and not feel it or practice it yourself. Famously in this book, that's not enough. You also have to act against it. And you have to act against it in ways that are specifically prescribed by Ibram X. Kendi. If you do it in any other way, you're just a racist. You're a racist unless you're an anti-racist, and the only thing that makes you an anti-racist is whether or not you do what he says, in the specific order and the ways that he says it. Maddening. Absolutely maddening. So I ordinarily don't keep maddening books, but this one, of course, is seminal, so that's probably why I did. Okay, here's this is a cute little thing in a series. This is Britain in Pictures. We've seen this on this channel many times. These little books, Britain in Pictures goes through a whole bunch of different subjects. The merchant men of Britain, the dogs in British art, horses in British art, bird watchers, cathedrals, the cathedral towns, that sort of thing. And the English Country Houses volume, which is a subject that I love anyway, is by Vita Sackville-West. So I grabbed it, even though it was in every measure a slight work. It is not meant to be anything big. Okay, this next one is Austerlitz by W.T. Siebel. So many of you have told me that you really love this author and can't imagine why he doesn't do it for me. And the people who have said that to me over the years have been the right kind of people. They've been the kind of people I can't dismiss that from. So I came across this hardcover, which someone had lovingly filled with clipped out quotes and also discreet but very interesting annotations all throughout. I figured if I was going to re-encounter this book, I read this when it first came out, but I figured if I was going to re-encounter it, I should re-encounter it that way, with someone who'd read it and loved it, and maybe died loving it. And it worked a little. It moved the needle just a little. I now know from this book and one other, I know that this is an author who will probably improve the more I improve, so to speak. That my understanding of this author will improve the more I go at him. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all the people who kept hammering at me about this author. And I'm grateful for the person who owned this book before me, who helped. Because it means that this author is salvageable, which is great. Okay, then we have Alan Eckert. This is his book, Wilderness Empire, which was a little bit of a shock for me. He wrote historical novels about the opening of the American West, that period from pre-colonial era to immediately post-colonial era, and a large series of books that you can find. Once upon a time, you could find them as a staple in bookstores. I don't think Alan Eckert is in print anymore at all. He also wrote a great biography of Tecumseh, but I don't think he's in print anymore. And I remember once years ago, sort of having a hankering to read one of the books in this series, particularly this one. And I had a little bit of a shock because I went online. I went on eBay to look for what hardcovers with dust jackets of Wilderness Empire would cost me, I thought that I'd be looking at 75 cents. And a lot of the results that I saw were expensive. They weren't just not 75 cents, they were expensive. No idea what's going on there. And I haven't checked to see if that was just a fluke in the market or if that's continued to be true. But eventually I found a dollar copy of one of these things at the Brattle, as I tend to do, and reread it, and my instincts were in that sense correct. Eckhart's doing a lot. He's doing a lot on the page. A lot more than I originally gave him credit for. He's worth rereading. So as I encounter his books, for $1 at the Brattle, not paying $85 for an Alan Eckhart book, but as I encounter his books, I will certainly give them all a reread, because part of me, there was a part of me that was suspicious that maybe that was true, and it turns out that it is. So, okay. And we have Britain in Pictures again, but this is a bigger thing. This is a treasury. So not the same size as the others, with a nice library cover here, so that I don't have to worry about that. But this has English wildlife, but the English wildlife is it's a few different volumes. So it's English bird life, English animal life. These are all separate volumes that you can get them as separate volumes. Look at the color plates here. Let me get you one. Just beautiful. Look at that. Just lovely. And I saw another thing that reminded me of Vermont. This is a polecat, big, vicious rodent that of the type. They have many of them up in Vermont that fishers and polecats and mink and whatnot. So this belongs with here. Let's just nudge it right next to that other one with country houses, because they belong together. Okay, all right. This next one is also a relatively new release. This is from. I must have a sheet on this. I'm sure that I do. Yes, I do. This is from 2018. I want to say 2019. It Came From Something Awful by Dale Barron, which is about Reddit and 4chan and Facebook memes and whatnot, and the viral effect that had on getting Trump into office. This book overestimates the effect, of course, because that's the whole bread and butter of the book, but I still found it too interesting to let go. You get books like this all the time in the popular market, especially during Donald Trump's first term in office. And most of them were kind of fly-by-night, but I kept this one because it seemed to have a snarky kind of intelligence to it. Okay, all right, well. All right, this next one is a UK trade paperback. It was just too pretty for me to get rid of. I have an ebook of this, and there's no reason for me to have a print version. I don't think I would ever read the print version. I think if I wanted to reread this thing, and I might, I would immediately go to the e-version. This is by C.J. Sansom, and this is Lamentation. Big, beautiful UK trade paperback, one of his Matthew Shardlake adventures. This one, like so many of the big ones at the end of that series, revolving around Catherine Parr, Henry VIII's last wife, who's my favorite wife and a fascinating figure for me, just in Tudor history, just in general. And the Shardlake and his cast of characters is also fascinating. I think these books get a little bit overlong. The fans clearly made it vocal to the author that they wanted these things to be doorstops, and so they became doorstops, but needlessly so. But I kept this thing because I couldn't bear to get rid of it. But when am I ever going to pick it off the shelf when I can just grab the ebook? I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Okay, this next one is a beautiful trade paperback of Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. With the deckled edges and the French flaps. Just a lovely addition here. The mass market paperback didn't have the deckled edges, of course, and it didn't have the French flaps, but I have one of those as well. I don't have a hardcover of this. I don't think I've ever seen one. This came to my bookstore. When was that? In the year 2000. This came to my bookstore as a trade paperback. And it kind of intrigued me, so I read it, and it is great. It's one of the great science fiction fantasy novels. Certainly one of the best ones of the 21st century. And I kept this trade paperback because of those fond associations, and also because of the nice build quality of it, even though I have the ebook, and would certainly go to the ebook if I wanted to read it again. Oh, okay. Wow. All right. Okay, this doesn't belong here either. This is the Dolphin Letters, 1970 to 1975. These are letters between Elizabeth Hardwick, Robert Lowell, and all of their friends, all of her acquaintances, all of his friends. Big, thick thing that I have absolutely filled with reviews. This got reviewed everywhere. Everybody took a whack at this thing. And I read them all. I never wrote a review of my own, but I read them all. I thought it was utterly fascinating. A fascinating, sort of a companion volume. There was an earlier volume of letters, but this is a fascinating look at the critical world, the book critical world, what Gore Vidal called the book chat world of those years. In addition to being everything else, I mean, the letters have all sorts of deep personal elements in them, but in addition to that, they're kind of an inadvertent X-ray of the critical world of the time. I just found the whole thing fascinating. So I kept it, although I'm not sure that it belongs here. I don't know that it belongs here. We'll just do a couple more here. This is Lowboy by John Ray. Novel, contemporary literature. Was this in the 90s? 2009. Story of a young man who's just not equipped. He's over-medicated, misdiagnosed, out in the wild. He's on the loose. His mother and the man that she enlists to help her want to get him back. And it's a lot of the book is told from his skewed viewpoint, and it is incredibly moving. Just incredibly moving. I don't keep much in the way of contemporary fiction. Obviously, I don't keep much, but I kept this. I could easily reread this, and don't have an e-copy of it at the moment. And all right, we'll finish up with something that I definitely don't have an e-copy of. This is. You're not telling me. There's a form in here, but this cannot possibly be. Okay, yeah, this was Transaction Books. Okay, so this was actually a request from a publisher. All right, this is Popular Government, Its Essence, Permanence, and Perils by William Howard Taft. This is one of his books. I was still with the original type font. That this is a new introduction by Sidney Pearson, and it was reprinted by Transaction Publications in 2009. There's life in the old dog yet. I don't know that there are ebooks of any of the works of William Howard Taft, but every once in a while, this shouldn't be here. I have a couple of other Taft books. I mean, books by Taft in the little book room. So I'll put this aside. This ought to join them there. But it's a fine note to end on. Popular Government by William Howard Taft, who wasn't a very exciting writer. Even I am willing to admit that. But it's just in case you're stampeding out to buy all of his collected works. Probably don't. Probably see if you can get them through a library somewhere. Anyway, that's a shelf tour out of nowhere. A WTF shelf tour. Don't expect many more. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.